Hi everyone, and welcome to Quantum Acacias. My name is Dee Dee. Oh gosh, it's 8:33 and I associate that to the goddess Newt. I was sitting here and I was like, okay, which one are we going to talk about now? And I think we're going to do Cyrus next. I'm not sure like in what order I'm going to put these because I've been trying to do them like ahead of time to make sure that I'm staying up on making sure that I'm actually putting these things out so I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to post the Cyrus one, but I'm going to do the Cyrus one next. But anyways, today we're going to be talking about another Qhht session. So overall, I have had about 5 or 6 Qhht sessions myself, like done on me. And all of them have been wild, to be honest. They've all been crazy, to be honest with you, honestly. But I figured that this has been coming up, and so I'm going to talk about was this my second QHHT session? I think it was my second one. I'm not going to talk about the whole thing, but I am going to talk about soul transference. Because soul transference seems to be coming up a lot just in general on suggested videos, and also I have still been having connections to hyperspace, and even with my pendulum, like we have been talking about clones and clone bodies and souls within clone bodies and stuff. So I figured to go with the energy of what's coming up, especially also teleportation, to go with what's coming up, I'm going to talk about this part of my QHHT session. So I'll give a general overview of the beginning parts, and then we'll focus in on the soul transference part, okay? Okay, so in general... Oh gosh, in general, it started off, and I think this session was in October 2022. Wait, hold on. Wait. No, it had to be October 2021 because I was still pregnant. So yeah, October 2021. Okay, so it started off very interesting, where I was trying to get the visual of what was going on, which is not uncommon in QHHT sessions, depending on what perspective the person is coming in on. So I was coming in on actually an aspect of myself in the void that was being called from the void to come to earth. Okay, so I started off and I was trying to get my bearings and figure out where I was and what I was doing. I was actually in the void space, and there was this alert system going on. Okay, and with this alert system going on, I saw this big old pill in the center of a hurricane, and in my mind I kept hearing, we have to go to Guatemala, we have to go to Chile. And I was like, Guatemala and Chile. And so it was this, so I'm from New Orleans, and we have the hurricane center. So if you've never seen it, there's this big old map that shows you how big the hurricane is. And then it'll show you where the center of the eye is, and then the projected path, okay? And so that's what I was looking at, was I was seeing this literal huge, humongous hurricane forming. And there was this pill in the center that looked a lot like Tylenol pills for some reason, a big old Tylenol pill in the eye of the hurricane. But I also felt like it has something to do with illegal drugs as well. But for some reason it was coming in the form of a Tylenol pill. So one side was red, one side was blue, and then there was that white part in the middle, I think. And so or maybe there wasn't a white part in the middle. I can't exactly remember. What type of plane is this flying that fast, child? They have this plane in the sky and it is flying so fast, and it's got just green and red, no white on it, and it's not that big. I don't think I've seen that before. Hopefully it's nothing crazy, because the planes have been doing the most lately. Oh, 838. Okay. So anyways, so the practitioner starts asking me, like, can you see your body and things like that? I kid you not. I kid you. It started off crazy, okay? I'm like, yeah, I can see my legs. They're frog legs. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, yeah. And like the top half of me is a fairy. I'm a fairy with frog legs. That's what. I'm a fairy with frog legs, okay? And so she's like, okay, yeah, okay, cool. And why are you looking at this hurricane? So anyways, I was telling her that there was some type of alert system, because beneath the hurricane, I started to see Earth. And I was like, yeah, there's something going on, and we need to go to Guatemala and Chile. So I'm answering some type of call to go to Guatemala and then Chile, okay? Now, the other part of this is that we got to Guatemala in the session. I never got to Chile in the session. So the Chile part of this is still a mystery right now. But it was a very heavy focus on Guatemala, okay? And so anyways, so next thing I know, she's like, okay, well, let's see you get into the body, okay? So I get into the body, and I'm kind of in a perspective of watching myself, very hesitant to actually get into the body, okay? But I'm watching myself. And so that's what I tell her, because I can see myself. Now, this version of me does not look really anything like who I am today. I was definitely a woman, I'm assuming a native woman or something like that. But the session kind of started off actually where I was like a shape-shifting dog that honestly looked like Anubis, okay? And I was like, I think that I'm a jackal. Like, I think I'm a jackal. And I was scaling this wall. Actually not a wall. I was scaling a building in New York. Okay, so I'm like scaling this building in New York, and I'm like, yeah, I've got to shapeshift back to my human form. And my practitioner is like, what is this girl talking about? What is she saying? I'm like, yeah, I shift between wolf and animal, and I've got some other shifts that I do. But I'm going to have to be a human to get up this wall, right? Not a wall, but up this building, okay? And so I was explaining to her what the building looked like and everything like that. Anyways, I get to the top of the building, and I realize that I'm there because there's this satellite, like this wire kind of satellite thing that's sending off the signal in New York. And I'm there like trying to figure it out. So it's interesting because the first place I went was not Guatemala. It was actually New York, okay? And so I guess it was sending off some type of signal. And so I literally shifted back into a dog, and I was like howling at the moon. And I was like basically telling the moon, and I guess there was some type of control system or something on the moon, that like this is the one that's causing the problems, because we couldn't figure out which building in New York was causing the issues. So anyways, we found the building that was causing issues, and so I was basically sending this message to the moon that this building is the one and this satellite needs to be adjusted. And so then after that, she was like, well, do you live here? And I was like, no, I came from Chicago, right? So this is where it starts getting interesting, because we go back to the day before, and it seemed like the day before I was in Chicago, and I started telling her about my life in Chicago. And we find out that I'm some type of like human hybrid, where my mother is from a place within the Cassiopeia system. And there's like this exchange program with Earth. So there's like this NATO of planets, I would say, like different planets and different galaxies and constellations. Not everyone is a part of it. Not everybody is accounted for, but there's a large, portion. And then sometimes people who have compatible parts can have children. Sometimes those children go into exchange programs where you can go and live in a different place on a different planet for a period in time. And so at the time I didn't really understand it, but I knew that I was like working in certain projects clandestinely, okay, on Earth. And at some point, which we didn't really go into this, but at some point, I ended up going rogue because I started realizing that they were doing things that were very unsavory. Okay, so in general, some of these kids or teens and things like that, because you had to reach a certain age or development, I would say. That's kind of like a universal thing, like a certain age of development in order to be a part of these programs, okay? And so just by the fact that you have DNA from multiple different places would make you an anomaly on each place. Do you understand what I'm saying? So what some people might consider to be quote unquote like a superhuman ability, at least in my case, was just because I had parents from two different places. And so, I don't know how to really say it, but like the best example I can give is like, I don't know, like someone who is born like from a mom at like a higher altitude or something, and then they have a dad who is like a lower altitude or something. Like the dad would have to adjust to the higher altitude, and then the person who can breathe at the higher altitude wouldn't have a problem going back to lower altitudes. Do you know what I'm saying? But somebody born at a lower altitude would have an adjustment period going to a higher one. That's kind of the same thing. So there were certain kind of, I guess, advantages of having parents from different systems, especially when you landed on Earth, okay? And so a lot of those kids would be put into some of these more clandestine projects because they have certain abilities that just naturally came with being, from two different genetic pools, two different gene pools, okay? So anyways, I did some work for them for a while and everything like that. And actually, in Chicago, now this is the crazy part because I don't know exactly for a fact, okay? I don't know exactly for a fact, but I know that, and I'm going to get to what I don't know exactly for a fact. I do know for a fact that I was in Chicago and that I live like in the reserves areas. And in those reserve areas, I was like a woman with a flower headband, and I always sat in like a birthing position. And it's interesting because it was kind of like a frog, but also kind of like a dog as well. And then there was a man that would come and get me every Thursday, and then we would go into the city of Chicago, like the downtown area, and he had like a apartment there, and in that apartment we actually had all of these blueprints and things on. I'm not 1,000% sure that it was necessarily Chicago infrastructure, but we were working together in Chicago with blueprints and infrastructures for something, okay? And this person was Werner van Braun, okay? Was Werner van Braun. Yeah, and actually when I got out of the session and I researched him, because I don't think I researched him like initially, like I knew his face and everything like that, but I didn't know he was Werner van Braun, like in my mind, like, and in this like memory, like I knew him, but do you know what I'm saying? So I was like, something was like, you should go like research that name. So I was like, okay, I'll go research it. And sure enough, it was Werner van Braun. And anyways, it was something like I had gone rogue in some type of way. He found me. And so we were kind of working together under the radar. Now, this is where the soul transference comes in, child. So in QHHT, what we like to do is to take people through the death experience of that lifetime, okay? And so if you have a QHHT session or something like that, they'll usually, towards the end of that lifetime, take you to the final days. And for some people, some of the things that they bring with them actually have to do with their death in that lifetime. And so it's really important to go through the death process, okay? So that's what we're doing, because I think there was just so much stuff I was talking about, and the person who was doing the session just did not have a reference for it. And so she was ready to kind of wrap up the session, which I totally understand, because I know she was like, what are you talking about? And when you're in that session, when you're in that space, it's very interesting, because I wasn't all the way under. I was still there, but it's like you are dictating a movie that you're seeing, and you know that it's based in reality, and everything like that. And a lot of the time you can't do things that would be socially acceptable. You know what I'm saying? She was asking questions, and I had to just say what I was seeing, because I knew in whatever way, form, or fashion that was the truth of it. So I don't know how I had the ability to shapeshift into a wolf or whatever, which I do have a story time about, not a story time, but Adventure in the Astrals about shapeshifting into a wolf. But I knew that in some type of way, that's what I had the ability to do. Okay. Okay. So anyways, so we get to the last day of my life, and I am in a laboratory. Okay. And the feeling is that I don't know when the Warner Van Braun stuff happened. I don't know kind of the transition to how I got to this lab, but I was definitely in a lab. Okay. And so I was in this lab, and I was pretty sure that this was the Guatemala. This was the Guatemala part of it. So I was pretty sure that I was in a laboratory somewhere in Guatemala, okay? And so she's asking what I see, and I'm like, yeah, I see myself, and I'm strapped up to this machine. And the best way I can describe the machine, it actually, weirdly enough, looks very similar to the dentist chairs that people see during abduction experiences. And I'm posting a video about my possible ET experience. I'm not 1,000% sure that the dentist chair experience itself is actually the ET experience, or if that's the government coming in to re-abduct you because you were abducted by aliens, or extraterrestrials or interdimensional beings or whatever it is. Do you know what I'm saying? But just taken out of this reality and brought somewhere for a period of time. Even last night, I was up in a space hotel last night. So I wasn't in somebody's lab being poked and prodded and stuff, but it was very clear that I was a guest at a space hotel, and that there were other type of beings on board. That's a whole nother story though. But anyways, it looked very similar to the dentist chair in a certain type of way, but it also looked like the light specifically on the dentist chair. But it also looked like a very retro kind of version of an MRI. So there's two beams that rotated around this chair that had lights on it, and it would spin really fast around the chair. And it was supposed to transfer your consciousness. So I guess the speed of it spinning and the light, because it seemed like the light had certain patterns to it, I guess, certain ways that it flashed. And then I guess the spinning of the light and the light combination of flashing pattern was supposed to take you out of the body and then transfer you to the other body. So I did see the other body, okay? And the other body was a male body, okay? That's number one and number two. It was a male body, okay? And so she was asking me well, why are they trying to transfer you to this male body? And I was like, well, because you in a sense, you grow up with your body. Your body has your memories. And so y'all are actually working in tangent. Is that it? Or is it in tandem? Tangent or tandem? One of those. Where your body also stores your memories. And that's muscle memory, because you've done these things together. The body has a certain level of sentience on its own as well. That's a whole nother conversation. And so I was like, yeah, like I have the ability, and they didn't know the full extent of it, but I was like, I have the ability to get out of body. And so they want to be able to control that aspect by putting my consciousness into a body that I don't have memories of, that I don't have memories with. And this body has not done some of the things that I have done with my body. And so it's going to be much more difficult in convincing this body that we can do certain things, and that can slow you down, which is a whole message in and of itself, honestly. But I was like, because they want to control me being able to jump through consciousness or whatever. This body it doesn't have any of those memories or anything like that. Like, it's almost like putting someone who has like really intense spiritual phenomenon happen into like a religious person's body. It's going to cause a conflict between the spirit and the body. Yeah. And so it was like spinning and everything like that. And then I popped out of the body. And so they were waiting to see like if I was going to wake up in the other body. But that's not exactly what happened. I just decided I didn't want to go to the other body. So it looked like I died. Like, it looked like I just died. And which is funny, because I'm like, at that point, when you're dealing with like soul transference and stuff, you have to know that like they just pop out of the body and they don't necessarily go anywhere. So anyways, I just stood there because what I was really intrigued by, the soul transference was interesting, but I felt like, you know, I knew about that, and I knew that like I didn't have to go to the other body. Like, somebody who, you know, like wasn't doing a lot of popping in and out of realities and stuff, like they might think that they have to go, and so they get sucked into the body with the machines. But you have a choice, though. You could just not go into the body. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, once you're out, you're out. You don't have to go back to the body, especially if they've done this like light code kind of situation or whatever to like sever your cord from your body. You're not tethered to anything, so you don't have to go because you don't have a cord to the other body. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I decided to kind of stay around, because what I was really intrigued by was the fact that the people that were behind the glass, so like I was behind the glass, like, and then there's like the scientists behind their glass. So I was definitely entrapped or whatever. But the scientists behind the glass, like, they all looked blonde hair, blue-eyed with glasses. Like, literally, they all look like almost like spitting images of each other. Not literally, but almost literally. Like, the same blue hair, short cut, like thin frame glasses and things like that, okay? But all of a sudden, there was this man that came in who was drastically different. And he looked more like an indigenous, like, but also maybe Middle Eastern somewhere in there, like a person. So he had very thick, dark hair, very thick, dark eyebrows, kind of curly hair on his beard and his head. I mean, totally not quote unquote Aryan or whatever looking. And I knew that he was like the big dog in the room. So I was like, hold on, where am I at? So that's when I was like, okay, I'm somewhere else. Now, I found out it was Guatemala when I started to research this, because I didn't know where I was in the laboratory. But the guy was so different than everyone in the room that it was hard not to focus on him. Along with the fact that he had this very deep forest green jacket on that was decorated with pins. Like he had so many pins on both sides of his jacket. Like the lapels were filled with pins. I mean, I'm like, did he get every pin known to man? Because this is like, it's wild. And so I was really trying to focus on him and his face, as I'm like, where are we at? Because he's not fitting the profile of who's supposed to be here. So anyways, I decided to look into it, and there's an operation that came up in Guatemala, and I'm pretty sure it was that one. But I thought that I wanted to just mention that about soul transference, because that has been coming up so much. And it's very interesting how, like, when you first kind of start hearing people's stories about these things, like, it sounds like so crazy and wild, and like, what are people talking about? But actually, the longer that you start to put a name to the things that people are experiencing, you realize that it's actually makes a lot of sense. Like, I started putting a lot of my dreams and stuff like that into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT started breaking down to me how I've already been quantum jumping, like within dreams, and then changing my reality. But since it's so subtle and I don't have words all the time to say what I'm experiencing, it's like you don't even know that you're already doing it. Do you know what I'm saying? So like when I'm talking about like transferring bodies and stuff, I mean, that also could be the concept of like a walk-in, where you're walking into this body that is not yours, or this consciousness is walking into this body that's not theirs. And what if they did get soul transferred into this body and don't remember it? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's so much stuff. Like, even with clones, like, people have had experiences of doppelgangers. And we know that, by the time the government tells us about cloning, they've done all type of stuff. And we had the first human clone actually on my birthday in 2004. And so they've been perfecting that for a while. So it's just really interesting, and I wanted to talk about that. And there's so much more to the Qhht session, but I didn't want to make it too long. I've got to keep them under like 30 minutes for Canva. And so at some point I'll do longer videos and podcast episodes and everything, and explain more of the Qhht session, and I'll talk about some more of them too. But I really wanted to touch base on that soul transference, because it's been coming up a lot. So as always, if you have any connections to stuff like this, or you've experienced soul transference, because actually my first Qhht session, I'm posting that at some point. I think it's actually connected to jump rooms, which I'd never heard of jump rooms until I watched this woman on Confessionals talking about jump rooms. And I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely what I was doing with like the Bermuda Triangle. And maybe the void space that I got lost in could have been a jump room or something. So yeah, that's what I have for you guys. I'm sending you lots of hugs, lots of love. I hope that this is putting some pieces in order, helping connect some of these dots, because reality tends to be a lot stranger